I think so. I think it's after the church.
Oh, that's why she had a mask. Organizational skills to be able to then build a church or a cathedral or something over that spot. So just because they said it was right here and there's a star on the floor of where it happened, that's not necessarily historically accurate. And so you had to keep that in mind. And a lot of times he would give us opportunities. For example, the one thing that came to mind was when we went to the River Jordan. And he said, you know, we can go to the tourist area where the gift shops are and you can spend $25 and get a white robe and be dunked into the River Jordan and do that. Or we can go to a different area that's very, very remote and it will only be our group. And that's what we consistently elected to do. And it felt just more real to our group, you know, very, very spiritual. And I'll show you some pictures of that. It was really something. And there were some things that we opted not to do. For example, the birthplace of Jesus. And we opted not, we went there and we saw the church and we saw everything. We opted not to go in. It was a 6-hour wait. Wow. Standing in line to go down some stairs and touch a piece on the floor. We opted not to do that. We opted to just be around that area. You know, our guide there said the Our Father in Aramaic, and that was, you know, it was very meaningful in a different way. But we didn't do a lot of the touristy type things. And I'm not denigrating that at all. I'm just saying this is what our group chose to do. The other thing Iyad always told us was, if you want to see history, you have to go deep. That anything that is authentic from the first century is really about 20 feet down below what we're standing on. And he said that was always a clue. If you had to take stairs down to somewhere, that was the authentic historical perspective. So he really made that trip to be a very spiritual pilgrimage. So I will show you some pictures. This is just an over. Can you guys see that? It's kind of low.
Yeah.
Okay, it's just an overview of the city. Like I said, and I'll get down to some more practical tips afterwards. And like I said, there was some stuff that I honestly didn't understand until I had time to go home and digest it and think about it. But well, that's my leaky water heater I came home to. There you go. So just some aerial views. And this was one of the first things we saw. Yeah, is that better? Okay, so this was the, oh my gosh, this was the pool of Bethesda. This is where we went near the old city of Jerusalem. They're doing excavations, and this would have been where the story where the paralyzed man was waiting for the waters to come and heal him, and his friends carried him down to the waters, and Jesus healed him. That was the site. It was like very powerful. And the other thing that freaked me out is that you're walking by and there's a gas station, and next to the gas station, there's like these archaeological digs, and then there's a drugstore, and then there's some other first century something. It was very, my mind was discombobulated a lot with all the history we saw. This is the place of Herodium, the place of Herod's palace that he built. And I had to look some of these things up here, but this was a palace fortress built by Herod in about 37 BCE. And again, it's a live archaeological dig. This was, we went to lunch in Nablus in Palestine, and this was just a fascinating thing. This was a big kind of a catering service in a banquet hall, but this guy, we went out behind the catering place, and it was like a big rock wall, and he had carved a cave into the rock, and that's where he put the coals and the fresh rosemary and the potatoes and and this is where he made us lunch. He just kind of put all the food in there and sealed it with mud, and it cooked for about 45 minutes. And what really impressed me about this man is how his faith was so woven into what he was doing. He had all these little religious icons and crosses and as part of just part of his workday life. His religion, his faith was not something he practiced on Sunday. This was something the man lived. It was really inspiring, but there he is, and this is his workshop, and interspersed among all the tools and things are things. There he is taking our food out. That was, and there was our meal. It was really good. So that's one of the minarets you see where the daily call to prayer for the Muslims. This was back at Herod's palace, the catapult rocks that they used for the fortress. It was interesting. They were trying to, this is the view from up on the hill of the palace, as you can see why it would be a fortress. This is what they're trying to restore it back to. And that was the well and the cistern. And there was this creepy little fox that kept following our group around, trying to, I'm sure hoping that we were going to drop a Twinkie or some awful American food but the guide told us that Herod was also nicknamed the Fox because he was very sly and always trying to figure things out and outdo people. And so the fact that, my skeptical mind, it's like, oh man, they pay that fox to hang out there. But it was kind of, it was pretty cool.
Maybe that's Herod calling you.
See, that's what he was implying, the spirit of Herod. And I was saying, okay, whatever. This was when we went to the Western Wall. That's my friend I went with. The Western Wall was one of the places where we had to cover our heads. The Western Wall is also known as the Wailing Wall, but they want you to call it the Western Wall now. And this is some of the leading up to the Western Wall of the city.
And it's called the Wailing Wall because
this is where you would go to petition and pray. And I'll show you, I've got some, that's the wall. This is where the Jews have to do their purification before that they pray. So they have the running water and the pitchers for and then in the background there, here's the wall. And the men were separated from the women. And this is where you would write your petitions down, your prayers, your sorrows on a little piece of paper. And then when you would go up to the wall, you would cram the paper into the cracks of the wall. And just as an aside, I was so obsessed with getting the words right and figuring out, this is my big chance. What am I going to pray for? My God, this is world peace hangs on my shoulders of what I'm going to write on this. And when I got there, I realized I had forgot my paper bag in the hotel. So that just goes to show you, it is so important just to be in the moment and don't fret about getting the most perfect picture or seeing everything. Just be and feel and take in what you see.
And the wall is the remnants of the great temple of Jerusalem
Yes.
that we hear about in the Bible. And
Yes.
it got leveled, and this basically is just like the ground floor, the basement really.
Yeah.
And so the Jews go up there praying that God would help them bring the temple back. And of course, what's on it is a Muslim mosque.
Yeah,
It's
yes.
gonna take a lot of prayers.
Yeah. But it was really interesting. And like I said, what Iad kept telling us, if you want the history, you have to go down. And this is obviously the steps down to the actual wall. This is just all, there's where the men and the women were separated, and there were chairs and people some people would spend hours there.
And the Jewish form of prayer is very, people are bowing down,
Yes.
like they
Very
look like they're
physical.
having a seizure, and they're really just
Their heads are covered. A lot of them had their foreheads pressed up against the wall.
Mhm.
It was
a
really,
very severe prayer.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, as Jesus prayed, what it would look like.
yeah. It was, this is just some of the archaeological stuff that was going on, all carved. Isn't that cool? All carved out of stone.
The Muslims, when they do their 7 times a day prayer, they put out a carpet, and you're right, there's some Muslims pray in that way where they're getting down on their knees, they're putting their hands back. Some people get a callus on their forehead from praying so much.
And then on the other side of the wall, not too far away, is the Dome of the Rock, which is considered the holiest place for Muslims, where Muhammad journeyed to heaven and back to Mecca. And we were obviously not allowed in there, but we could look around it. So this would be the holiest place for them. It was a beautiful, beautiful temple. It's just some of the outside tile work. It was something.
So you could get around it.
Yeah, you just couldn't, you
inside.
couldn't go in, yeah. And then this is, if my back was to the Dome of the Rock, this is looking forward, and then down those stairs and further down would be the Garden of Gethsemane. So it was really hard if you saw this day and this day and this another day. It was really hard to wrap your mind around physically. What are we talking about? What are the steps of Jesus and this and that? And he took us to a museum which had a little miniature Jerusalem city model that helped a little bit in our minds. But it was kind of, it got a little confusing. And there's the Garden of Gethsemane. I have some better pictures of that. Like I said, they just had all kinds of stuff and different churches we went to. Our group was really, they were a bunch of singers, and they really honed in on different churches that had great acoustics, and we would just walk up as a group and we would sing a song. And then all the other people would just stop and listen to us afterwards. It was really, I got goosebumps thinking about it. I'm a terrible singer, but the people I with were awesome. Half the time I just kind of hummed or, pretended I knew what was going on. The other thing I thought, wherever we went, whenever we went through a city, there was always a Starbucks, but it was never a Starbucks. If you notice, this says Stars and Bucks Cafe. So I was taking pictures of the Stars and Bucks cafes a lot. It's kind of funny. We went on Sunday, we went to a Palestinian church, Episcopal church. I'm trying to think of the name of it, but it was a regular parish just like ours that we went to, and we had ice cream afterwards. But this is their church, and we had Sunday Eucharist celebration in Arabic. It sounded kind of like Pentecost, where everybody was talking in different tongues. It was very cool, and to go to their coffee hour afterwards like we did too. It was interesting. That's their church, the Arab Episcopal Center, St. Andrews, that was the name of it. And I have no idea where that was. This is the model of the, we went to the Israeli Museum and they had a model of Jerusalem and he had his little cat toy laser pointer and he was explaining the overview of where everything was in relation to things, and it made a lot more sense after he did that. There, that's the thing. This was another really something I will never forget. We got up before sunrise and drove on the bus to the desert, and it was the Wadi Kelt, so the valley of the Judean wilderness, and this was where we wandered through the desert, and I was just trying to imagine before sunrise what it would be like to wander in the desert for 40 days and 40 nights. It was really something. And so we had our own little meditation walk in the, and this is all we saw as far as the eye could see. And then once the sun came up on that plateau there, we did have a Eucharist celebration. It was very, very meaningful. And when we came down the mountain, then they had that kind of freaked me out. I'm walking around this hill, and I come back and there's this white donkey, and it's like, well, that wasn't there 10 minutes ago, and it was a little creepy. But then at the end, I saw the Bedouins who come and it's like, okay, so this is their money making kind of thing. So they had and then they had the camel. And if you wanted to ride a camel, they had a camel for like $10. You could ride a camel. So that was kind of cool. This gentleman here was part of our tour. He was in his 90s, and he was an orthopedic surgeon, and he had a picture of his father riding a camel in the same desert wilderness from like the 20s. And he wanted to ride a camel and get his picture taken like his dad. And that was a really touching moment for him. And then of course the kids came with these white linen cloths and wrapped them around our heads and made turbans and, faidala after that, which is, so it was very cool. It was their way of making a living. And I tried very hard not to think of, okay, is there lice in here? And, me being a nurse, I'm a little bit of a germaphobe, but it was very nice. And I still have that cloth. I still cherish that cloth that I have. It was cool. We all had our little turbans on. And there's our donkey. There's the Bedouins that came in.
And the desert plays very profoundly in scripture. I
Oh,
wanna
yes.
say there are 60 to 70 mentions of desert
Yeah.
in the Bible.
Yeah, it was something. This was it Zacchaeus that was too short and couldn't see and he climbed the tree? Well, this obviously isn't the tree because, this tree was not 2,000 years old, but that was like one of the few sycamore trees left in the area. I'm going the wrong way, sorry. This was, we took it, this wasn't, I have to look it up. It was at the Mount of Temptation overlooking Jericho. That's what this is. And we took a cable car ride. This is the site of Jericho was the site of Jesus's 40 days of fasting in the temptation by the devil. And there was a Greek Orthodox monastery built into the cliffs of the mountain. So this is the cable cars that we took over to the monastery. And it's one of the few agricultural areas too around Jericho. So I'm going the wrong way. I'm so sorry. You see the irrigation pipes and the hoop houses and greenery from the agriculture. And there's the cable cars. And if you see the little holes, that's actually where the monastery is built. We were able to go inside. I was inside the monastery on a balcony looking back out for these pictures.
And Jericho's the oldest city in the world.
Pardon?
It's the oldest city in the world.
Jericho?
Yep.
Is it?
Yep.
Wow.
Jericho older, yeah.
See, I still don't know half the time what I'm looking at. There was so much.
Oh, you could spend
So much.
so many years there and still have.
And this was in the cave monastery, and the floor is built in, and they had these people would write their intentions on paper and put them in the caves like that. And this was inside behind that cliff that we saw with the holes. That's what this is. And this is the church inside the cliff too. Very ornate. And it was interesting. This is one of the places we had to cover our heads. And there was the guy that came, and you had to keep both feet on the floor. So if you were sitting on the pew and saying some prayers, you had to keep, if you incidentally just crossed your legs, he would come and tap you and point at your feet, and you'd have to sit up straight and put your feet down on the ground. They had some very, very strict rules.
What's the reason for that?
I'm not sure. Respect, I guess. I wasn't sure.
What
did
about
not-
the pool of Bethesda? Is it still there or it's not?
I'm sorry, what?
The pool of Bethesda.
Oh, the water?
Yeah.
No, was not there. No, the water was not there, but the pool itself was there. And they're doing a live dig to try and see what they can find and reconstruct it.
Did it dry up all by itself or it just?
I don't really know. I know we had to go down, so it was really about 20 feet below street level that we had to go down, but I don't really know. This is Mary's well, this is Nazareth. This was Mary was at a well drawing water when the angel Gabriel appeared to her, and this was the well. Behind it was another big Greek Orthodox church. This is all in Nazareth. I'm gonna. So, I'll stop for a minute. So we stayed at St. George's Convent in Jerusalem, or St. George's Guest House in Jerusalem for about 2 or 3 days. And then we went to Nazareth and we went to a convent, and we stayed in a convent, the Sisters of Nazareth. And the accommodations weren't quite as nice. I mean, they were fine, don't get me wrong, and clean, and the food was phenomenal, but it wasn't just quite the same. And we were wondering, I wonder why we're here. I mean, what's the purpose of staying here? And you'll find out. And I don't want to spoil it for the people who are going. I don't want to say anything about it, but you'll find out what makes that place special.
Can I
And
ask one more question?
yeah,
What about you said you went to visit a Palestinian, was it a Palestinian parish? If it's supposed
yes,
to- Was it in Israel or was it in their city?
it was in Palestine, in
was in
Palestine. Yeah.
I didn't think it would allow a Christian. to-
Well, I'll show you the booths that we had to go through. Yeah, it was really something. The armed guards and the wall. the whole bit. Yeah. So this is the convent we stayed at. They had like a rooftop patio that you could see. That's the Annunciation Church. It's there. And over there is the Church of St. Joseph, what they believe is the birthplace of Joseph. And that's the convent. That was the view from our bedroom.
That's on my list to do, go to Israel,
It-
Asia Minor.
Yeah, it was something. This is the Church of the Annunciation. This is a little bit more of a modern church. And the very cool thing about that is on the outside perimeter, there was a courtyard, and all different countries from all over the world sent a mosaic of their depiction of the Blessed Virgin Mary. So it was just really interesting. That was Macedonia, Japan, that was from Poland. That was like, there's Buddhist Mary or Hindu Mary. It was very, very cool. I really enjoyed looking at all the different versions of Mary. That's the American. This is what the United States sent over as a depiction of Mary.
There's a lot of history in the Bible, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Japanese Mary. It was very good. This is the streets. I mean, our bus drove up that street. It was, I was glad I wasn't driving. And there's my, there's my Diet Coke, my Nazareth Diet Coke. I thought that was kind of funny. And this is part of the Sea of Galilee. This is St. Peter's Primacy. It's just a little chapel. I think it was built in the 40s maybe. But this was where they felt that, after Jesus died and he started appearing to his disciples. The one story we read in the Bible where the disciples were out fishing and then they came to shore and Jesus had a fire going, was cooking fish, and they all had a fish breakfast together. This is the rock that they think where this happened.
Is that the original rock? or
Yes,
just the rock?
that's what they say. They said this is the original rock. They said, and they built this chapel. If you'll notice, the rock here goes right through the wall, and then it's inside. It's like the altar is on the inside. And I'll tell you, this is, how you have like thin places that you feel. This was my place, and I had no idea why but it was just a very moving, very spiritual place for me. Everybody had their moment, and this was the place of my moment, and I have no idea why, but it really was. So there's the rock and more of the rock, and there's the inside of the church. There's the other side of the rock.
Yeah, but if everything is down under,
Yeah.
why is it the rock still on the town?
I think because it was sea level,
Oh,
and there's more of the rock. And that was I just thought it was kind of an interesting piece of wood. But there's more of the Sea of Galilee. We were supposed to go on a boat ride, but it was too windy that day, and we were not able to go on the boat ride. There's an olive tree. This is where they think the Beatitudes may have happened, and it was really cool. They did did an experiment with just the way the land was laid, that one of our retired priests on our pilgrimage climbed up halfway and then started speaking. And it was amazing how we were so far away, but we could hear. Because I've always wondered, like loaves and fishes, there were 5,000 people. How did everybody hear Jesus? They didn't have a microphone. Well, just the natural sound and the way that the land was, you could hear her talking up there. It was really, really something. This is the not picturesque River Jordan. I don't know what I expected, but it was not this muddy Rouge River. And on the other side is Syria. If you'll notice, there's barbed wire and guard stations and all kinds of stuff, but that's the River Jordan. And this is not the tourist area. This is the area that we went to. It was a very spiritual.
it's a tourist area where the crossing was and the Jordan, because they crossed the Jordan to get over in the land. Was that where?
Like I said, nobody knows for sure where, and the topography changes. So we were probably 5 minutes upstream from that.
Oh.
So we never did go to that area. But what we did is one of the priests that were with us, he grabbed some olive branches from the tree, dipped it into the Jordan River, and we renewed our baptismal vows and received the water that way. And it was very touching.
The Jordan River was across to the water parted in the Jordan River.
Yeah, and they encourage you to take the water with you. So people were scrambling for empty water bottles so that they could take some water with us. And I actually did that and got the water home with me. And being the person that I am, I ran it through coffee filters 4 or 5 times. And then I boiled it for quite some time. And then I sealed it in some mason jars. And it's been 2.5 years and nothing's growing in there. So I must have killed everything. But it was really interesting. I gave some to Father Chris to use for baptisms here. And a couple of my grandchildren were baptized with that water I brought back from the Jordan River. So that was very special to us. And they encouraged you to walk in the water. Being who I am, there's no way in heck I was going to put my feet in that water. But plenty of people did. And this is the one of the churches of the loaves and fishes. And they had some surrounding grounds, but it was just beautiful.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, so So this is Capernaum, which we've heard a lot about in the Bible. There was another church with the archaeological digs. Give me a second and I can come up with that. Capernaum was the place where Jesus first met his disciples while he gathered the fishermen and come follow me. That's it. That was there.
Did you went where they had the Last Supper? No.
They aren't really sure. It's funny you should ask that they aren't really sure where the Last Supper was. But we went to a place where it would have been like the Last Supper, and I've got some pretty cool pictures of that. Just some more archaeological digs going on the Sea of Galilee. I thought that was really a beautiful statue that was just titled Jesus. We went to the Israeli museum and they had a boat. That this is not the boat the disciples fished from, but this is a boat from 1 AD that they carbon dated, and they even mapped out the different kinds of wood, each different color, like they had cypress and willow and all the different, they DNA'd it and carboned it, but this is basically a boat very much like what the disciples would have been fishing in. It was a beautiful museum. It had a lot of art. And this was my favorite piece. That's the face of all the disciples in the sail of the fishing boat. I thought that was kind of cool. I wish we could have spent more time at this Israeli museum. It was beautiful, but they had a nice gift shop there. So keep that in mind if you go. We went to Sepphoris, which is the, would have been the biggest city around the time that Jesus was here on earth. And it's also called Zippori, which I think Zippori, I think that's what it's called in the Bible. It was really the largest city and it was believed to be the home of Mary's parents. So it was very likely that Jesus spent a lot of time there visiting his grandparents. And they had a room that with the mosaic tiles on the floor, and that they described, I have a couple other pages, that it was very much like the room of the Last Supper would have been. And they call it the Mona Lisa of the Middle East. I have a picture of that. It was some very beautiful mosaic tiles, floors. This is one of the roads in Sepphoris, I'm sorry, it's called Sepphoris. And if you look, you can see the wagon ruts. This road was used for so many centuries, and you can see the ruts that the wagon wheels had left. The other really cool thing is that there were all shards of pottery, just red clay pottery shards everywhere. You could just kind of pick them up and put them in your pocket. That was one of my most treasured artifacts, treasured souvenirs, was a piece of pottery from the first century. Well, you weren't discouraged, but I'm sure you weren't supposed to, but everybody was, it was no big deal. It was interesting. This is one of the mosaic floors of that room. It was kind of really detailed. I ended up getting a little pamphlet about Sepphoris just because I found it really an interesting place. There's a woman with pomegranate breasts, which I thought was a little interesting. This was the amphitheater. This would be conceivably where people would gather to hear speakers, to the town government, things like that would have been here. That's us sitting there. This is one of the main fortresses, the lookout points. And he was talking, the guide was talking about how you could tell the different centuries. And the more you dig down, the big squares at the bottom would have been, or, in the first century. The middle, you see the blocks are a little bit smaller and more precisely cut. He said was about the 400s. And then the smaller ones were around the 700s. And it was just kind of interesting to see the evolution of the block cutting as well. This is a map of the tile floor that they're trying to, and there's the Mona Lisa of the Middle East that they're trying to reconstruct. And this was their depiction of what the Last Supper room, what they're trying to restore it to look like. How you would be reclining around the table on these mosaic floors, and it would have been sunken in. This was, I'm not quite, I tried looking and looking and I can't find much information. This was some of the 7 springs that came together. And there was a lot of pagan altars here. This was, this is an altar to the god Pan. This was a very interesting, the earliest people that lived in that area because of the water settled in this area. And they had all kinds of, there was a little animal, we weren't quite sure what it was, but it kept following us. The different altars built into the rock. That was very interesting.
I thought Lord was always mad with them. They always tried to worship other gods.
Yeah, in the temple of Zeus, the temple of the sacred goats. It was fascinating. I wish we had more time and I could have understood this area better. And this was, they had this big drum. It looked like a sideways dreidel. And then you pushed it around, and as it pushed it around, it printed scripture in the sand.
Oh,
That was really cool. And then you could mess up the sand and do it again, and it would print more scripture. It was a very pretty area, and it was a beautiful day. This was my friend, the spice salesman. This was this was back in Nazareth, about 2 blocks away from the convent where we were staying at. There's all the different spices, and you went into a store and he had a mill in the back, and that's, you would just point to what you want and he would scoop it up and sell it to you. So this was back in the convent, and if you look at this, this was really pretty. This was donated to them. Butterfly wings. It's made all out of butterfly wings.
oh, wow.
That was really, no one else seemed impressed. I thought it was really cool. No one else seemed all that impressed, but I thought it was really cool. And this was the courtyard inside the convent where we stayed.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it was very pretty. And this was all inside the convent. And then we went, this is another Greek Orthodox church. They were so very, very ornate. This, I think, was in Palestine as well. I can't find the name of it, but this was also the miracle of Saint Georgie. This was the patron saint of troublemakers. I think maybe that's probably why I was drawn to it, but it was in Birkin City, and it's Saint George slaying the dragon. It was a beautiful old church. That's looking over. There's the priest at the church there. There's the back of our guide, Iad. Very, very ornate. And this is Jacob's Well. This was in the basement of this church. This was Jacob's Well. And they let us send the pail down and bring up the water. And then they had a cup, and they were passing the cup, and people were drinking the water. And being who I am, I did not drink the water, but there are plenty of people that did. And that was very interesting. And there's the depiction of Jacob's Well. And they had a lot of relics and icons in this church, and it was extremely ornate. There's a martyr being skinned alive. You sit and it's this huge mural, and then the more you look at it, it's like, it's mind-boggling what's being depicted, that your brain just glosses over till you start looking at it. Again, this is the same very, very ornate church. Oh, this was also in Taibeh, which is a city in Palestine that they're really trying to resurrect. There's a family that owns a distillery and a winery and an olive press, and they started the very first Middle Eastern Oktoberfest in October, and they're really trying to revitalize. There was a huge article in the Free Press a couple of months ago about this family and what they're trying to do. It's a very, very famous hotel too, that is part of an art gallery. And it was funny, I was reading some historical fiction, and it was set in that hotel. It's interesting now that you know about it. Anyway, we went to a bakery, and the Middle Eastern pastry that looks like bird's nests, like shredded wheat. Well, we learned how they made it. This is a huge grill that spun in a circle. It was like a metal disc, and they would just squirt out these thin strands of batter, and almost instantly it would cook up. And then they would form it into rolls, and they put the special, it was knafle, it was what it's called. They put some special cheese in it and then rolled it up like that, and then they bake it, and then they bake it like that, over gas ovens, and then they roll it in the crushed pistachios, and it was just, oh my God, it was so good. It's always, to avoid catastrophic floods, don't flush anything in the toilets. The toilets were kind of an interesting, but it looks like the man is throwing a laptop in the toilets. I don't know about you, but I don't really flush laptops usually, but somebody did apparently. And this was a 4th century, another Greek cathedral that was abandoned, and that the people in the area kind of go into the ruins, and they do their own kind of rituals and things. It was very different. You could see feather and blood and live sacrifices. It was really different, you know, how this was a beautiful 4th century church that fell to ruin, and how the people in the area kind of made it into their own needs and their own belief systems.
You mean idols?
It was different, yes, idols and sacrifices. This was all the abandoned church. It was beautiful. There's more of the desert. And I think that must be the end. So,
Excellent.
thank you. I didn't know quite everything of what I was looking for, but like I said, it was so overwhelming, and your day is so packed. You're up by 6, sometimes even earlier than 6, and you are going all day, all day, all day. There would be dinner, and then after dinner, we would have guest speakers. And he arranged guest speakers from the local colleges or local politicians. And it was very interesting because we got a Muslim view of the Middle East crisis. We got a Christian view. He had, every night was a different speaker. We had a local Episcopal bishop come and talk to us. And the things he were talking about, describing, are the same problems that we American churches are facing. How 5% of the people do 90% of the work in their congregation, how to get people, young people, more interested in the church, and pledges. You know, it was outreach. It's the same problems that every church faces around the world. It was very interesting. I know some of you are wondering about spending money. I took about 500 in cash, and I think I spent about 250 to 300 in cash.
Oh, do you?
And then, no, it really, well, you might be surprised, but some of the places where I bought souvenirs, we went to this place called Sunbula. It was a fair trade organization that promotes traditional crafts. It was at St. Fotini's Greek Orthodox Church. We went and had lunch there, and they had a little gift shop, and it was all handmade traditional items. And the money went directly to their organization. That was a really nice place. Yeah.
What currency?
You know, pretty much everybody takes cards. Everybody takes cards. I did not change much money.
If you did, what currency?
Shekels and denarii. Yeah. But I didn't change much money, and I was glad I didn't. You know, you tip the bartender at your guest house. And pretty much anywhere you bought souvenirs you would take a card. I'm sure they preferred cash, but you could take a card. And a lot of,
They don't take US.
yeah, oh yeah, they love US, absolutely, but they give you money, they get your change is not US. So when you spend the US dollars, you get your change back in their money. A lot of the Orthodox churches had little gift shops, and they had some like candles and like this little like a rosary bracelet, or places like that. Iad took us to this giant gift shop. It was a giant gift shop with everything you could imagine. I was kind of overwhelmed, and the prices were kind of high. And there's a little guy, when you get closer to the date, you might want to have Father Chris communicate with this gentleman. He owned a little gift shop right across the street from where you stay at St. George's gift house or guest house. And he had everything you saw in all the gift shops you ever need, right there in his shop, all crowded and a lot less money. And he would cut deals. I got a couple beautiful crosses and necklaces there. I got a cross made of, a Jerusalem cross made of olive wood. There's a lot of different creches and things like that. So I really think he gave the best prices, and I felt I was most comfortable, and he was a very honest man. Now, you might want to check and see if he's still, I don't want to say still alive, if he's still there, because he was a kind of an older guy, but hopefully his family will take over when the time comes for him.
Mary, did you exchange money there?
There.
Or you didn't get it like a pre-tax?
My friend did, and well, you know what, now that you say it, I did. I think I did about $50 or $60, not much.
Where did you go over here to get?
The
like,
bank, and you have to do it ahead of time.
Yeah, I know some banks do it, some banks don't.
Yeah, I went to Bank of America and they did.
Can I just add, you can go to the currency exchange in downtown Birmingham.
Okay,
Right, you can always call if they don't have it. They usually get it within 48 hours. And then they
Yeah.
will write back your bill for that. They are extremely good.
and you know, at the airports, they have the exchange places there too, but I wouldn't worry about exchanging too much money. We bought a couple bottles of wine at the brewery and the winery when we were in Taipei. That was interesting. That was good wine. As far as clothing, there is a laundry service that's at the guest house, and they tell you it's 24 hours, but it really isn't. So just don't, if you need to have something laundered, don't expect it back the next day. To them, 24 hours is if you get it to them on Monday, Tuesday's a 24-hour day, and then Wednesday you'll get it back. Is kind of how that works. So I dressed in layers.
Yeah, you're there long enough to wash stuff one day in your sink.
Yes,
And then
if you
just
needed
let
to
it-
rinse,
That's what I
yes.
used to do when I go out.
Yeah, exactly. If you need to rinse something out. But my friend unfortunately dropped her coat and was dragged through ungodly things. So that's how we know about the thing. So, but the accommodations were clean. Were they luxurious? No. The shower is kind of like one of those where you could only kind of go like this. You sure couldn't, dance, but it was clean. The people were very accommodating. The food was phenomenal. It was kind of the same wherever you went. So you have to embrace that. You're not going to get cheeseburger or fries anywhere. But it was just unbelievably good, clean, fresh food. It really was. A lot of chicken, hummus with every meal, certain salads with every meal, the bread, fresh pita, just really good food. I enjoyed it. I'd recommend taking a backpack with you. When you go places on the bus driver is your bus driver for the week. And when you take something, you can leave it on the bus because he stays on the bus and locks the bus. So you can leave stuff on the bus while you go to do whatever you're going to do. And then you come back and your stuff is still there. So that was, I got to have more pictures because I had the Dead Sea. If you want to see it.
And Mary, one more question while you're looking at it. Do you have individual bathrooms or communal bathrooms down the hall?
Individual bathrooms. The sanitation out in the public was a lot to be desired. But that's in the United States, it's the same way here as well, right? Public bathrooms. I had a backpack, like I said, and okay, so we're frozen. There we go. I had a backpack and I would keep with me a bottle of water. I would keep sanitizing wipes and personal wipes, like hand sanitizer, things like that in my backpack at all times. They do not flush toilet paper. They do not flush anything but waste, human waste. So there's trash cans, and then for 10 days, it's like, oh, darn it, I forgot. And I flushed the paper. And then once I got home, I started throwing paper in my wastebasket. It's like, it's kind of, but I would not recommend to drink the water. It's okay to brush your teeth, to take a shower in. I even wouldn't really worry about ice, but if you were gonna drink a glass of water, you need to use bottled water. I would recommend taking a little pharmacy with you. Take your Tiger Balm for your sore feet, take your, it's doing a thing of its own, isn't it?
Okay.
Yeah, I would take your anti-diarrheal medication. I would take your antacids, some Tylenol or Motrin. I would make sure that you had a little arsenal of things like that. Band-Aids if you get a blister, comfortable shoes. I don't, in my perspective, we didn't do a lot of walking, but I'm still working, so I'm walking a lot. So I'm not sure, everybody has their own perspective of the activity level. I didn't think it was a lot of walking, but other people did.
Temperature?
Well, we went in November. It was 70s in the day and 50s at night. So you needed a sweater or a jacket in the evening. And during the day, it was short sleeves. There were only 2 places that we could not wear short sleeves, and we had to dress up and we had to cover our heads. And one of them was the Western Wall, the Wailing Wall, and one of the cathedrals in the cliffs. We had to cover our and most people just wore like leggings or comfortable soft clothes that, pants you could walk around on. I took one nicer outfit to go to church on Sunday at that one Episcopal church. But it's just like the clothes I would wear here to church. It was nothing.
You didn't have to wear a dress or anything?
No.
Okay.
No.
Did you have to avoid sleeveless shirts?
Um,
Or did they require women to have?
Yes, there were a couple places, and they sell everywhere you go. They're going to sell the shawls everywhere you go. And we call them shishis in my family, just like a little cashmere throw. But that can double as around here, or you can put it over your head and drape your shoulders as well. I wouldn't worry too much. Go for comfort and quick drying and layers. Like, I don't know what my computer's doing now, but it's unfrozen. We did go to the Dead Sea one day, and I don't understand why it was bad. Here's my food. Now I'm hungry. Now I want Middle Eastern food. I don't know why my computer is now possessed. Yeah. Yeah. We did go to the Dead Sea one day. That was the one tourist area that we did go to, and it was wall-to-wall people. The Dead Sea is it's mud, like it's not a beach. It's definitely mud. I did not go in it. Plenty of people did. Plenty of people were floating in it. Plenty of people like rubbed their entire bodies with the mud of the Dead Sea. It's supposed to have really healing properties and good for your skin and whatnot. There are plenty of people who did. There's a gift shop there, and there's a place where you can change your clothes. So some people did bring a bathing suit and a towel, and they changed, and they absolutely went in the Dead Sea. There's a gift shop where you can buy the Dead Sea salt for your bath and skin scrubs and things like that. That was one place, was very shoulder to shoulder people. That was really the only place we ever went to that was crowded like that. And there had to have been 200 buses, parked. Yeah, it was definitely a tourist area. And it made me really glad that that's what we chose not to do. Because I was really intimidated by that area. My friend and I, and a lot of people in our group, just ended up getting chairs and sitting, and people watched for a while. Some people did go all the way in and did the whole mud bath and everything, but I was not one of those people. Is there any questions or any?
She covered everything.
Yeah, I was trying to think of things you might ask, and, oh, a journal. Bring something to write, I'm not a journaler, I'm not a meditator, that's very hard for me. What I did is EOD gives you a little booklet with your itinerary for the day.
Oh.
And I would get home and I would just write what we did every day and draw pictures and just little things. And going through this to prepare for this talk, boy, this brought a lot of memories back. So this was really helpful. My friend I was traveling with, she had a diary and she wrote pages and pages and pages and pages. That's just not me. But she found it very helpful. And
Mary, I wanted to ask about the electrical outlets.
yeah, you need an adapter.
You need an adapter.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I thought you would.
Yep. I travel with the CPAP machine. I had no trouble with my CPAP. I did not use distilled water. I used bottled water. But I had no trouble with my CPAP.
You find plenty of bottled water over there.
Yep, it's all over. Wi-Fi is all over as well. Cameras, I used my phone, that's all I used.
Yeah, you've got some incredible pictures.
Yeah,
You really
yeah.
have an eye for.
Thank you, but I tried very hard not to get, to be in the moment and not be all about the photography. Because wherever you go, you can pick up little books and pamphlets that you can read later. And there's one book in particular I found really helpful. It's the Holyland, that one.
Is this one they sell on the bus?
Yes, there's about day 5. Our guide had all these books that he passed around on the bus, and he says, if you want to order them, you can get these in gift shops. I can get them a couple dollars cheaper. So we ordered a bunch of books. Apparently he meant to do that on day 1, but he didn't get the book samples or something. That book would have been very helpful to me from day 1. Every page is just a 1-page explanation of what I'm seeing. Just nothing, it doesn't go into depth. It just tells you what it is. And then if you want to go into more depth, you know what to look for and what to read. But that was a really helpful book. But he had a handful of books that he recommended that, which I really appreciated. At the end of our pilgrimage, our guide had us over for lunch at his house, his own home, which was really nice. And it was catered by the local YMCA women's shelter. And that food was just unbelievable. And it was so cool to be able to see how a family lives there. Now, obviously, he had more money than a lot of other people, but it was very cool to see how a person, what the houses were like. And
Did you bring any gifts for any of the locals, any
No.
US gifts?
the only thing that they told us is to bring little candies for the Bedouin kids.
Candies?
Yeah, so we all brought candy for the Bedouins, and there was 2 little boys. So these 2 little boys got
Yeah.
tons of enough candy for the rest of their lives. There were no, I mean, like I said, I am not a world traveler, and the only other places really I've been to are Mexico and Barbados and, Caribbean areas. There were no panhandlers at all. There were no
really?
beggars. You were not approached at all on the street at all. A lot of cats. For a big city with a really dense population, there was litter everywhere. Litter just absolutely everywhere. It boggled my mind how much litter was everywhere.
Did you get litter or?
No, litter, garbage,
Oh.
and not garbage, litter, paper and stuff. And apparently there was a political thing going on that we pay our taxes, you ought to pick up our litter. And it's like, you people shouldn't be littering. There was a little social thing going on at the time. There was litter everywhere. And there were cats everywhere. So I did not see one rat or one mouse the whole time. And we were in ancient cities, with questionable, water and municipal things. And it was, in that aspect, it was very clean. And I'm thinking it's probably because the cats were all really well fed. So in that aspect, it was really really clean and something. And just the, you know, the frame of mind that you're in, like I said, you're at a gas station buying a bottle of water and you're looking at a first century pillar or something right next to you. It was just very mind boggling, you know, just, yeah, it was cool. It was, yeah.
Is there anything that you didn't do that you wish you had?
I wished I would have read a little bit more about what's in the walls of the city of Jerusalem, because that was very intimidating. We walked the parapet all the way around it, which was very cool. I can't seem to find the pictures of that. But the city itself is divided into 4 quarters. There's like the Christian quarter, the Muslim quarter, the Armenian, and I think the Greek. And so they all had their unique things. But you're in a maze. You are literally in a maze, and I was terrified of getting lost separated from my group, because it was shoulder to shoulder people constantly, and there were stores, open air merchants on each side that you wanted to stop and look at things. And I was petrified of getting separated from my group. So I wished I would have looked more about the old city of Jerusalem in the different gates and the different quarters. Now that's where the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is. And that is the one place that they have been able to carbon date and prove that that's the cross of where Jesus was crucified.
Would you go back
To
Israel? If you get
you know, no, but not for what you're probably thinking. I was tempted to go back with this group, and I'll tell you what, I had such a phenomenal trip, and it was so spiritual. I'm afraid if I go back, I would have so much of my mindset on that I'd be disappointed, and that I couldn't duplicate and replicate the feelings and the emotions. So I toyed with the idea of going with this group, and I thought, no, because what if it ruined my first trip for me? You know, it was, I know it sounds silly, but it's like, you know, sometimes you just can't go back, and
yeah, but you didn't get to see everything. Well, I don't know if I would, maybe I would be the same way like you, but I don't think you could see everything you want to see.
I don't think you could ever see everything there. It really was, there's so much history, so much history. So it was really, I can't say enough about it. And our guide had a knack. I mean, he's always on his phone doing this and that. And I can't tell you how many times we would be leaving somewhere as 40 buses were pulling up. He had his network, and he would all of a sudden, oh, you know what? I know we said we're going to do A first and then B, but we're going to B right now. And we'd all just go, okay. And we'd go to B, and there wouldn't be anybody there. If you notice, my pictures really had no people in them, you know, and then as we would be leaving there, here would come the buses. So he had his magical network that kept us away from a lot of the crowds. So it was.
And you used your, did you ever communicate back home?
Wi-Fi, yeah. You
Did
can
use WhatsApp?
yeah, you use WhatsApp, or you can use the guest house had computers that you can use to send emails. My friend got the international plan so she could communicate with her husband and her family. I didn't feel like I needed to, because I feel I was how many thousands of miles away, and there was nothing I could do if something happened. So, you know, but it was she did it, and it wasn't that expensive. I didn't feel like I was that out of touch. I don't know. I was really intimidated by the long flight
How long
airfare.
was it, by the way?
It was about 8 hours. And then we were at De Gaulle Airport, and then another 4 or 5 to Tel Aviv.
Yeah. And you left from Detroit or
Mhm.
Toronto? Detroit?
Yeah,
To
to De Gaulle.
France, okay.
Yeah. Well, how long was it? Do you know? Yeah.
I don't know, I've been there.
I thought it was about,
I took that flight, yeah, but.
I thought it was about
like
8.
6 hours.
It's 7 hours.
7 or, yeah, it was, all I know is that I was very intimidated because I do not do well sitting still for that long. And so I did go to my doctor and I did explain that, you know, I have some concerns. I've never done an overseas flight like that. And she gave me a prescription for 6 Xanax. You know, and so it was magical. I just appeared there. No, so I took a couple hours into that first flight. I have no memory of de Gaulle, but apparently I was appropriate and kept my clothes on, you know, and navigated the airport and got where I needed to go with my luggage and everything was fine. And apparently I watched a couple movies and sang along to the music but it was not a problem, but that was probably the major source of anxiety for me was the air flight, but it ended up being not a problem at all.
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you, Erin.
If you have any questions, just ask me. And again, I'm not an expert and this is just my experience.
That was
It's
what was
not,
so beautiful about it.
you know,
Thank you
so it's
much.
but it was awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
These are other 2 little things I bought while I was there. This is nard, you know, the oil, the anointing oil, and this is frankincense oil.
Oh.
This was like $1 or $2, and it's a roll-on. And it became part of my morning ritual after this pilgrimage, where I would anoint myself every morning with the cross on the back of my hand, and I say a little prayer about, you know, going out to do God's work in the day, and that became a ritual of mine. It was cool.
Cool.
That's it. Beautiful.
It sure was.
It was really nice.
I don't know how to shut this down. I'm gonna leave. Leave meeting.